Welcome back, everyone, to Mystery Case X. Today, continuing our true crime series, we are going to look at a case that left the people of Taiwan deeply shaken, outraged, and afraid. This case contains many mysteries that to this day have never been fully explained. The case took place in 2006 and became known in the press as the Hualien family murders, or Hualien 5 children case. Hualien refers to the district in Taiwan where it occurred, and the 5 children refers to exactly that 5 children killed on the same day. The events unfolded at house number 25 Lane, 285 Jian Road, Hualien District, Taiwan. The couple who lived there were Liu Qi-chin, 48 years old, and his wife, Lin Jinmi, 35 years old. Together, they had 5 children. 3 of them were older children from Liu Qi-chin's previous marriage, 18-year-old and 17-year-old sons and 12-year-old daughter. The other 2, an 8-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl, were the biological children of both Lius. In total, the household had 7 members. Starting on September 7th, 2006, neighbors living nearby began noticing a foul smell coming from the house. They saw no sign of the owners, though Chi's motorcycle and bicycle were still parked in the yard. By September 9th, the smell had become so overpowering that it was impossible to ignore. Neighbors, sensing something was badly wrong, called the police. When officers arrived, the front door was locked tight. After knocking and receiving no response, they forced their way inside. The moment the door swung open, they were confronted with a horrifying sight. 5 bodies lying in the 3rd-floor bathroom, all in an advanced state of decomposition. The unbearable smell had been coming from them. What made it even more disturbing was how the bodies had been arranged. They were stacked on top of one another, each person's head resting on the next, forming a circular shape. The hands and feet of every victim were tightly bound. Their mouths were wrapped in tape that extended all the way up over their eyes, and over each of their heads was a black plastic bag tied off at the neck. Those 5 bodies were the 5 children of the household. Police searched the entire property, but found no one else. Neither Qi-chin nor Lin Jinmi was anywhere to be found. Examining the scene, investigators discovered 2 pieces of paper with strange messages written on them. The first was an A4 sheet that read, "Please call the police. The children have been kidnapped. We are in danger. Please help." The second message was scrawled on a 1,000 new Taiwan dollar bill. Number 25, Lane 285, is under serious threat. Call the police. Both notes read like desperate cries for help. But something about them made no sense at all. If they were genuinely calling for help, why were both messages left inside the locked house, where no one would ever see them? A person crying for help would throw a note out of a window, push it under the door, do something to get it out into the world. Instead, both were hidden inside. That contradiction was one of the first things that troubled investigators. Questioning the neighbors, police pieced together a rough timeline. The bodies were discovered on the 9th. The smell had started on the 7th. But on the evening of the 6th, a neighbor had seen Liu Qi-chin outside as usual, taking out the trash. Also on the 6th, the school had sent a message to Lin Jinmi asking why 2 of the children had not come to class. She had replied that the children were feeling unwell and would be staying home temporarily. That was as much as neighbors in the school could tell them. A brief look at the couple's background. Qi-chin was originally from Taitung. He had lived in Hualien district for about 10 years. He rarely kept in touch with relatives or old friends, and had not even returned home when his own father passed away. People who knew him described him as unusually withdrawn and difficult to read, the kind of quiet that went beyond reserved. Yet, whenever a dispute arose with a neighbor, he would suddenly become hot-tempered, aggressive, and hostile, a stark contrast to his usual silence. Because of that personality, when Chinmi announced she wanted to marry him, her family strongly objected. She had been married once before, and her relatives found Liu's peculiar demeanor unsettling. But Chenmi was determined, and her family eventually gave in. The two married and had 2 children together. By all accounts, from the school and neighbors, the 5 children got along well despite being a blended family. There was no visible tension or conflict among them. The family was known to run a small photo studio, offering photo-taking and printing services to earn a living. One detail stood out. Chi had told neighbors that he used to work for the National Security Bureau and had been a military pilot flying advanced fighter aircraft. He claimed he had been injured during a training exercise, suffering a spinal injury that left the right side of his body and his right arm partially stiff. However, when police checked his records, they found no trace of any employment at the National Security Bureau, and no record of him ever being a pilot. For reasons unknown, he had constructed an entirely false personal history. Back to the investigation. The crime scene presented so many contradictions that detectives were overwhelmed. First, the 2 calls for help had been written, but left inside the house. Second, the front door had been locked from the inside using a coded mechanism. If someone had gone out and locked it from outside, that would be one thing. But this was locked from within, creating a sealed room that appeared to offer no way in or out. Police were initially baffled, but after examining the door closely during a scene reconstruction, they found a small hole. By inserting a bent metal rod through the hole, it was possible to reach the inner latch and pull it closed. So the killer could have exited and locked the door from inside without a key. Third, inside the room where the children died, everything was clean and orderly. There was no sign of any struggle, no overturned furniture, no indication that anyone had fought back. Killing 5 people without encountering any resistance at all was deeply puzzling. At the scene, police collected 3 cigarette butts scattered across the 2nd and 3rd floors. DNA testing identified the smoker as a family friend. He was called in immediately for questioning. He confirmed he had visited the house on September 1st, sitting downstairs with the couple for a while, and smoking before leaving. His alibi for the day of the murders checked out. But the question remained if he had only been on the ground floor. Why were his cigarette butts found on the 2nd and 3rd floors? That detail stayed unresolved. Another significant piece of evidence was a digital camera found in the house. Its memory card had been removed. Whatever had been saved on it was gone. Shifting focus to finances, investigators looked at whether the couple had any significant debts or financial disputes. Records showed that when they first opened the photo studio, tourist traffic had kept the business healthy, and the couple had been doing well. Feeling confident, they borrowed approximately 3 million new Taiwan dollars from a bank to expand. But the expansion went badly and losses mounted. They no longer had enough money to keep up with repayments. Police discovered the couple held a total of 17 credit and cash cards. Their combined debt had grown to an enormous figure, approximately 16 million new Taiwan dollars, equivalent to more than 12 billion Vietnamese dong at that time. When investigators spoke to Chi Chin's older brother, he was stunned. He said he had no idea the debts had piled up that high. His brother had borrowed money from him from time to time, but always small amounts and always repaid on time. Police also tracked down creditors and found threatening messages that had been sent to the couple: pay by the deadline, or the whole family pays the price. However, the debt collectors all had solid alibis, and their reasoning was practical. Threatening to help collect money, sure, but killing the entire family would mean no one left to repay anything. That theory was eliminated. One question never left the investigators: where had the couple gone? Were they alive? Did they even know what had happened to their children? Police reviewed all security camera footage in the area. They found footage from Jian train station showing Chi Chin and Chin Mi on the day of the murders. They appeared completely calm, walking normally, showing no signs of being threatened or under any kind of duress. And then the footage stopped. They simply vanished. That was when police formed a theory that had been forming in the background all along. The couple themselves had killed the 5 children. There was no other logical explanation. 5 children dead in that condition, and the parents calmly walking through a train station without alerting anyone, without showing fear, without calling for help, before disappearing entirely. The investigation stalled with no further leads. Years passed. Then, 9 years later, in June of 2015, a hunter moving through the mountains of Hualien district stumbled upon 2 sets of skeletal remains. Officers arrived at the scene and collected scattered bones, personal effects including glasses and shoes, and a bottle of pesticide. After extensive forensic analysis, the remains were identified, and by now most of you have probably already guessed whose they were. They belonged to Chi Chin and Chin Mi. Despite 9 years having passed and the bones being badly degraded, forensic examiners determined that both had died from pesticide poisoning. They also ruled out the possibility that the scene had been staged, for example, that the 2 had been killed elsewhere and had poison poured into their mouths afterward. If poison is forced into a person after death, the toxin cannot travel through the body, and the bones below the point of entry would show no signs of exposure. In this case, the effects were consistent throughout the entire skeletal remains, pointing clearly to voluntary ingestion while still alive. At this point, a technological breakthrough helped bring some of the truth to light. Using advances in digital forensics, investigators were able to recover deleted images from the internal memory of the digital camera found at the scene 9 years earlier, the same camera whose memory card had been removed. The recovered images showed a man using his own hands to bind one of the 5 children. The face was not clearly visible, but when family members were shown the images, they said the build and the feet of the man in the photograph looked very much like Liu Qichin. With this, Taiwanese police officially closed the case. Despite many questions remaining unanswered, it was considered highly implausible that an outside perpetrator could have broken in, killed 5 children without a trace of struggle, forced the couple up into a remote mountain area to take their own lives, and left behind absolutely no evidence of his presence. From my own perspective, I lean toward the theory that Liu Qichin killed the 5 children and then went up the mountain with his wife to die. Looking at the available facts, I believe Liu showed signs of what psychologists refer to as grandiose delusion. Consider this: he went around telling people he had worked for the National Security Bureau and had flown fighter jets, none of which was true. He did not return home when his own father died. Perhaps there was something dark in his past, some deep estrangement or old wound. People with grandiose delusions tend to construct an idealized image of themselves for the world to admire. They have enormous egos built on extremely fragile self-worth. An ordinary person who fails or gets criticized may feel hurt for a moment and move on. But someone with grandiose delusions can experience even a small slight as a devastating humiliation. Liu Qixin had built the identity of a successful businessman and former elite operative. In reality, he was drowning in 16 million new Taiwan dollars of debt, cycling through 17 cards, borrowing small amounts from his brother, just to keep the walls from caving in and telling no one the truth. He would rather die than face failure. He could not bear the thought of people looking at him with pity or contempt. Backed into a corner and seeing no way out, he chose death. But why take all 5 children with him? In family homicide cases, some perpetrators, in the grip of a distorted psychology, reason that they are the provider, the center around which the family exists, and that without them, the children will suffer alone and abandoned. In their warped thinking, taking the children along is an act of love, sparing them from a painful life. This echoes a case in Texas where a man shot his entire family and left a note reading, "If only I die, the people left behind will suffer terribly." I love my family deeply, and so I have decided to kill them all. Liu Qixin may have carried that same broken logic. As the father of the household, he could have administered sleeping medication to the children before restraining them, which would explain the total absence of any struggle or resistance. As for Lin Chenmi, perhaps bound by a deep sense of duty to follow her husband, and equally overwhelmed by the weight of their financial ruin, she went along with it, and together they walked up into the mountains to end their own lives. Those are my thoughts and observations on this tragic case. What do you think about the Hualien 5 children tragedy? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, take care everyone, and I will see you in the next case.